was talking to my friend about the LGBTQ community who are up in arms because a certain group want to add P to the end. P is for pedophilia. He was shocked, but I'm not, because they've thrown it in our face for decades. One example is Lolita, written by Vladimir Nabokov. Humbert is a de facto paedophile who, by sexually objectifying his prey and reclassifying them as inhuman creatures with preternatural powers, is able to then cast himself as victim. Humbert achieves this deception by inventing the nymphette. He says, between the age limits of 9 and 14, there occur maidens who, to certain bewitched travellers twice or many times older than they, reveal their true nature, which is not human, but nymphic, that is demonic, and these chosen creatures I propose to designate as nymphets. Lolita fashion is popular in Japan. The goal is to look like a Victorian doll. We go further down the ladder of depravity with nymphette fashion, dressing up like a child when you aren't. Pan is a fertility god that is associated with the Green Man. Thank you to the person who reminded me of the Green Giant. Robin Williams played an adult Peter Pan in the film Hook. His clothing looks like leaves, and he does have a similar appearance to the Green Giant. In Greek mythology, satyrs are a troop of male companions of Pan and Dionysus. Satyrs acquired their goat-like aspect through later Roman conflation with Faunus, a carefree italic nature spirit of similar characteristics and identified with the Greek god Pan. Hence, satyrs are most commonly described in Latin literature as having the upper half of a man and the lower half of a goat. Therefore, satyrs became nearly identical with fauns. The Satyroi were rustic fertility spirits of the countryside and wilds. They consorted with the nymphs and were companions of the gods Dionysus, Hermes, Hephaestus, Pan, Rhea Cabell, and Gaia. C.S. Lewis introduced us to Mr. Tumnus the Faun. Fauns and Pans are the same creature. He meets a girl named Lucy in the woods and takes her to his home, where he plays the flute and puts her under a spell. This is a statue of the god Cernunnos, and a picture from The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. The way they made his umbrella around his head looks identical to Cernunnos because it's the same creature. Fauns and satyrs are associated with Dionysus, the Greek god of wine and debauchery. Dionysus is the god of the grape harvest, winemaking and wine, of fertility, ritual madness, religious ecstasy, and theatre in ancient Greek religion and myth. His festivals were the driving force behind the development of Greek theatre. Some of the more specific types of satyrs were the Pans, goat-legged satyrs, Selenoi, elderly satyrs, Satyrskoi, child satyrs, and Titaroi, flute-playing satyrs. In BBC's The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, Tumnus played a double flute. In the updated Disaster, he plays the same instrument. He finds Lucy in the woods. She's wearing green and he's wearing red. What's he doing taking a little girl to his house? And who also plays the panpipes? Peter Pan, the adventurous leader of the Lost Boys who whisked the darling children away to Neverland. No, he didn't whisk them away. He kidnapped them. In the 1930s, Disney made the Pied Piper. He plays a fife to lure the children into a stone portal because their parents refused to pay him after ridding them of rats. And who else plays the flute to lure children? Krishna. You want to look into the story because Radha is 13 years old. He lives in a Neverland sort of place, playing music. That does connect to Mozart's Die Zauberflöte, the sorcerer's flute. We have similar imagery here. Oh look, he's playing the pan pipes. Music has frequency, which affects brainwaves. They're always updating Peter Pan. The pan pipes are on the A and around his neck, confirming that he is Pan. Peter Pan peanut butter has been around for donkey's years. They took the EA out and just left P. I think it's only in America. I haven't seen it here. Let's look at some vintage adverts. Boy, it's licking good. Peter Pan is just 60 seconds old when you open the jar. Why do you need children to sell your product and doing such suggestive things as that? When researching Peter Pan, I did find this. Peter is slang for male genitalia. Etymology 1, US 1902. Compare the use of other men's names as slang term for the penis. Example, Dick, Willie, John Thomas, etc. The play Peter Pan was written in 1904, so I'm certain J.M. Barrie knew about this. The definition of a willy is a slang term for male genitalia, connecting us to Willy Wonka wearing purple. Tim Burton reinvented it and made him look like a right nuncer. Willy Wonka is playing a flute. He's got children around him. In a notable scene, the children are licking wallpaper, and he says the snozzberries taste like snozzberries. Did you know, 15 years after Roald Dahl wrote Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, he used the word snozzberry to refer to a penis in his adult novel, My Uncle Oswald. Therefore, one of the most famous lines spoken by Willy Wonka is secretly a dirty joke, and the snozzberries taste like snozzberries means the lickable wallpaper tastes like willies. There's a new program called Pansexual and Panromantic. I looked in my dictionary. Pansexual means omnisexual. Oh look, the word panpipes is above pansexual. Omni means all, so sex with anything? Does that include demons? Or aliens? Some people claim their children are half alien. Does that mean animals as well? Go Ask Alice states that pansexuals can be attracted to cisgender, transgender, intersex, and androgynous people, and that the term pansexual is generally considered a more inclusive term than bisexual. Cavendish's Sex and Society, however, states that although the term's literal meaning can be interpreted as attracted to everything, people who identify as pansexual do not usually include paraphilia such as bestiality, pedophilia, and necrophilia in their definition. It doesn't include bestiality and pedophilia. Well, here's an ancient statue of the goat god Pan copulating with a female goat. These three colors represent pansexual. Going back to Hook, Peter with the mermaids, look at them. Pink, blue, and yellow. Pansexual alien, well that's accurate. Pansexual colors, not a phase with the moon phases. This is often connected to witchcraft and rituals. Diana is the Greek goddess of the moon, bringing us to Dianic Wicca. Dianics pride themselves on the inclusion of lesbian and bisexual members. It's a goal within many covens to explore female sexuality and sensuality outside of male control, and many rituals function to affirm lesbian sexuality, making it a popular tradition for women who have come out. Some covens exclusively consist of same-sex oriented women and advocate lesbian separatism. Dianic Wicca developed from the women's liberation movement, and covens traditionally compare themselves with radical feminism. The majority of Dianic groups reject transgender women due to the tradition's foundations in biological essentialism. This is why some groups are strongly against transgender rights. Diana, goddess of the moon, whose symbol is a horned animal. You're a mixtape. No, you're mixed up and programmed. There's the alien again. The Pan ring, similar to the black ring in ace culture, representing the absence of sexual attraction. The translucent or transparent glass ring, worn by pansexuals, symbolically represents the potentiality for attraction towards all genders, with the clearness of translucency, encapsulating all possible colors of the spectrum. The rings are worn on the middle finger of the right hand. Let's look at our palmistry. The middle finger is governed by Saturn. Peter Pan's sword is shown as a P, very similar to the pansexual symbol. Who is Pan? He's a half-man, half-goat fertility creature who fancies nymphs, which are young boys and girls. That's why Tumnus is with Lucy. This is not a Christian author. They've put this in your face for a long time, but you weren't paying attention. Satyrs, fauns, and Pans are attracted to nymphs. Question, do you think of yourself as an nymphette? Answer, what is an nymphette? Well, according to Vladimir Nabokov, it's a child between the ages of 9 and 14. Tinkerbell is a nymphette, and Disney sexualized her. Why does Peter have to tap her bum to get the fairy dust out? Cernunnos is a horned god found in Celtic mythology. He's connected with male animals, particularly the stag and rut, and this has led him to be associated with fertility and vegetation. Depictions of Cernunnos are found in many parts of the British Isles and Western Europe. Tyre was considered the mountain of God, as well as the Eli's gateway or Ishtar gate to the etheric otherworld. The passage tombs and mounds are called She, a pun on the She people or Shining Ones. From the earliest dawn of Irish mythology, Celtic rites were performed here. Ea led the Anunnaki in search of the blue stones that cause Eli, meaning illumination, luminescence, enlightenment. He found them at a place called Arley, Ireland. The cluster of 3 orbs symbolize them just as they do the word or life force of God. When a human places himself in resonance with the blue stone's life force, it transforms them from a human into a god. Correspondingly, the Irish root word Ea means fire or the light which lightens all. You see, Cernunnos has those 3 spirals on his belt. Dada, father god of the Tuatha De Danann. The Dada is an important deity in Irish mythology, portrayed as a king, chieftain and druid. He's associated with fertility, agriculture, masculinity and strength, as well as magic, druidry and wisdom. Yet another incarnation, they brought their system to many lands. Cernunnos, the horned one, deer-headed Celtic god of fertility, life, animals, wealth and the underworld. The horned god is born at the winter solstice, marries the triple goddess at Beltane and dies at the summer solstice. He's the doorkeeper to the other world, which tells me he's a portal god. Egyptian god Apis, Osiris, Roman god Janus. Also known as Ala, Ale and Ana, feminine. In the lesser well-known Etruscan mythology, Ani is the god of the sky who lives in the heavens. A few scant sources link Ani as god of the crossroads. Like his later Roman counterpart Janus, Ani is shown having 2 faces. Symbols: key, staff, 2 faces, doors, archways, gateways, portals. While there isn't a whole lot known about the ancient Etruscans, the few imagery and status of Ani that have been identified show him having 2 faces, much like Janus. There's a similar female deity to Ani, distinguished by the change of vowels to Ana. Belenus, Chaldean god, also called Baal-Janus. Brahma, Hindu god. The imagery of double or 4-faced deities in Hinduism is common. Brahma is the god who created the universe. Kulshanch. In little-known Etruscan mythology, Kulshanch has been identified as being the counterpart to the Roman Janus. This connection seems more likely given Kulshanch's role as a god and protector of doorways and his depiction of having 2 faces. Izimud, also known as Ismu, in Babylonian, a deity featuring 2 faces, appears several times in Babylonian art. Izimud is the messenger of Enki. Janus, Roman god of beginnings, gates, transitions, time, duality, doorways, frames, portals, passages, and endings. You mean like this example of syncretism, a double bust of the goddess Isis and the Apis bull, associated with Serapis? More likely Serapis himself, a syncretic Graeco-Egyptian deity, Osiris Apis. Serapis, Greek form of the Egyptian Osiris Apis or Os-Serapis. Hellenistic writers associate Serapis with Osiris, Dionysus, Hades, Zeus, and Asclepius. Isis and Osiris depicted as serpents. In ancient Egyptian religion, Apis was a sacred bull worshipped in the Memphis region, identified as the son of Hathor. The Apis bull was an important sacred animal to the ancient Egyptians. Creating parallels to their own religious beliefs, ancient Greek writers identified Apis as an incarnation of Osiris. The earliest mention of a Serapis is in the authentic death scene of Alexander from Royal Diaries. Here, Serapis has a temple at Babylon and is of such importance that he alone is named as being consulted on behalf of the dying Alexander. Although it has been discovered that the unconnected Babylonian deity Ea was entitled Serapsi, meaning king of the deep. To the left is seen the Egyptian bull Apis, considered to represent the rebirth of the ancient god Osiris. To the right we see Hathor, daughter goddess of the sun god Ra, a solar disk between her horns. In Palestine, Hathor was seen as the equivalent to Astarte or Ashtaroth. Ashtaroth is the plural form of the word Ashtarah, which means increase, but is applied as flock. In Egypt, the name Astiratu was mentioned in the Tel el-Amarna letters in Ashtari. The Bible mentions the goddess as Ashtoreth in 1 Kings. She's noted as the Phoenician goddess of love, although in Canaan she was known as Astarte, the spouse of the chief god Baal. Ishtar, the Babylonian version of the Sumerian goddess Inanna. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, she tries to seduce King Gilgamesh, is repulsed by him as he lists her many faults as a fair-weather lover, and calls down the bull of heaven to punish the king. Inanna Ishtar is another name for Isis. Osiris is god of the dead. His symbols are the crook and the flail. A crook is used to keep your sheep in order, and a flail is used to discipline your sheep. There's a direct connection between Freemasonry and the ancient Babylonian mystery religion, from which the ancient pagan religions of Egypt, Persia, Greece, and Rome eventually developed. It all goes back to a man named Nimrod, who the Freemasons view as the true originator of their order. The Pashent was the double crown worn by rulers in ancient Egypt. The Pashent represents the pharaoh's power over all unified Egypt. It bore two animal emblems, an Egyptian cobra known as Uraeus, which symbolized the lower Egyptian goddess with jets, and the Egyptian vulture. Cernunnos has spirals like the Egyptian crown. Cernunnos has horns, and Osiris has horns as well. Cernunnos is the horned one. He alternates with the goddess of the moon in ruling over life and death, continuing the cycle of death, rebirth, and reincarnation. Osiris myths, Isis and Osiris. The horned god is born at the winter solstice, marries the triple goddess at Beltane, and dies at the summer solstice. Osiris is a god of earth and vegetation. He symbolized in his death the yearly drought and his miraculous rebirth. Cernunnos represents fertility, life, animals, wealth, and the underworld. Osiris represents agriculture, vegetation, fertility, and resurrection. Cernunnos continues the cycle of death and rebirth. Osiris is represented by death and rebirth. With his mighty antlers, Cernunnos is a protector of the forest and master of the hunt. He's a god of vegetation and trees in his aspect as the green man. Osiris is a green man. He was classically depicted as a green-skinned deity. Who's the green man? The green man is found in many forms throughout history. He is to be found in many different guises. He's often found carved in wood or stone in medieval churches and cathedrals. Why they were included in the construction of these buildings by the Masons has perhaps been lost in the mists of time. Fauns are a Roman mythical creature mirroring the wild men of the woods. Very similar to the green man, except the green man was covered in leaves instead of hair. I'd also like to point out the legend and cult of Cernunnos, the horned god of the Celts. Again, we have a being who was lord of the forest, who bore horns on his head. Osiris has horns on his head. Osiris is a green man. Cernunnos has a snake in one hand. Osiris is depicted as a snake. You don't know who you worship or what you worship. Before Egypt, it was Sumer. Therefore, Osiris is probably Enki. Enki/Ea is a mischievous god of wisdom, magic, incantations who resides in the ocean under the earth. Osiris is compared to Janus. Izamud, with two heads, is standing behind Enki. If Cern is named after Cernunnos, and Cernunnos is really Osiris, then what does that make Cern? Now we go to Bepo, the Benevolent and Protective Order of the Elks. Bepo, also known as the Elks Lodge or simply the Elks, is an American fraternal order, and this group also exists in Canada. The Elks had modest beginnings in 1868 as a social club. The Elks borrowed rites and practices from Freemasonry. Done. Their icon is an elk with a 5-pointed star above his head, meaning they worship Cernunnos, aka Pan, Herne the Hunter, Satyrs, Faunus, the Green Man, Osiris. It says they took from Freemasons, and the Masons practice Egyptian sorcery. The freighter above you is not going to tell you what they do. You learn when you go up in the levels, and then you discover what they really do, which is what I'm telling you now. The elk always has a clock on him, and the time is 11 o'clock. The 11 gates of the 11:11. Within the doorway of the 11:11, there are 11 gates. Each gate is a stepping station to a new frequency band of energy. Each gate has a unique vibratory keynote with which we must align ourselves in a state of harmonic resonance. The gates of the 11:11 can be entered at any time once they have been activated, for we are not all on the same timing within our evolutionary spiral. In Stranger Things, the child is called 11, and she opened a portal bringing this demon here. Happy birthday to the Bepo, founded February 16th. February is the second month, plus 16 equals 18. The day and hour of Venus is 1 or 8. It was founded the 16th of February. Many historians, however, seem to trace Valentine's Day to an ancient Roman festival called Lupercalia. This was held on February 15th to honor Faunus, the god of animal life, hunting, herding, the patron of husbandry, and the guardian of the secret law of nature. So that tells you what this fraternity is really about. Initiation night. I'm certain they do sex rituals here. 2 clocks on their lodge. because the Apkallu wear 2 watches and stand in front of the Tree of Life Stargate. The oaths you took were not to the Masons, they were to these entities. That's why after people are initiated, everything goes wrong in their life. You're gonna tell me it's a cleansing process? Fix up. He's a god of vegetation and trees in his aspect of the green man, and a god of lust and fertility when connected with Pan, the Greek satyr. Herne the Hunter is a manifestation of Cernunnos. In Pan's Labyrinth, he said, "I've had so many names, old names that only the wind and trees can pronounce." Here again we have a faun with a young child. The pillar tells you who they are. Faunus says the moon gave birth to her. The crescent mark on her shoulder confirms that she is a moon child. The horned man, the girl, and child is the Egyptian trinity, Isis, Osiris, and Horus. Her father is king of the underworld. Osiris is king of the underworld. That's why she made the sign of Osiris descending and the sign of Osiris ascending in the same scene. Do you see the door that's behind her? This is Tanit symbolism. A door is a portal. The spirals connect him to Cernunnos. He said he has many names, but his real name is Osiris. Her father had them open portals all over the world, and he says this is the last of them, so the labyrinth is a portal. Why did the spiral mean pedophilia? I'm not interested in the conspiracy. As I've said, spirals mean frequency and portals. She said when she was very young, the Satanists used her to open portals and these snaking lights would come through. They used sacred prostitutes to open portals, using the energy of children to open up these portals. This is a Masonic drawing called the Second Portal. It shows nude boys facing a throne undergoing some type of magical ritual. The drawing appears in The Hidden Life in Freemasonry. C.W. Leadbeater, a 33rd degree Freemason, printed his book, The Hidden Life of Freemasonry. This book was written for people involved in Luciferian rituals and the higher, more occult rites of Freemasonry. In the preface, Leadbeater talks of butterflies, which has the double meaning, and the occult of souls as spirits. In the last chapter, he gives Masonic rituals to invoke angels or demons through Egyptian magic. In these Masonic temples, the checkerboard square is used in a similar fashion as a magic circle for a coven. This picture is given as a paper trail to show the sex magic rituals that take place within various Masonic groups. Egyptian is Sumerian, and these covens invite the fallen ones into their life. You didn't come into this realm to sell out. The pale man in the film represents Saturn or Cronus, who is eating children. Peter Pan has taken on another incarnation in Zelda. Peter has a green hat, pointed elf ears, plays panpipes, wears a green tunic. Tinkerbell is his companion. Link has a green hat, elf ears, wears a green tunic, plays a flute called an ocarina, and has a fairy friend. Previously, I've stated trees are portals. Pan's Labyrinth tree is a portal. It resembles his horns, but a uterus as well. Peter and the Lost Boys live in a tree. Peter owns a small knife with a gold hilt. The faun gave Ophelia the same dagger. It was meant to kill her brother. In witch circles, this dagger is called an Athame. In the original play, Peter used to kill off some of the Lost Boys to thin them out. Peter's friend is Tinkerbell, and Faunus has some sprites. Peter and the children flew under the full moon on their way to Neverland. Ophelia won't murder her brother, so Pan has her killed in his place. She dies under the full moon. Her blood goes into the lunar portal and he takes her to Neverland because she's dead and will never grow up. That's the 3 pillars in Freemasonry right there. Pan is a half man, half goat. In another guise, he's called Baphomet. This was in the program Dexter. I think Baphomet is Osiris and Isis combined. Here's a vintage Peter Pan cup. Doves connect to Ishtar, and the rainbow links Iris to Ishtar. One hand up and one hand down, same as Baphomet. The same story is told in Labyrinth. You see the symbol on the poster? It's the symbol for Tanit, the portal goddess, featuring an inappropriate obsession with a nymph.
So it wouldn't be.
I found I could talk very straight to her. We talk about her performance. I didn't have to tiptoe around her feelings or anything like that. She could talk, just as an adult.
Apart from being quite beautiful, she's a really good actress. And she's a pleasure to work with. One forgets that she's just 14 years old, and she's really very mature.
Well, I didn't forget she's 14. Jareth's crystal turns into a snake. One snake in the hand, exactly like Cernunnos. He flew into the window, which is a portal, and she made the sign acknowledging Osiris. Jareth is Pan, Faunus, etc. Satyrs and Pans are attracted to nymphs. She wears silver, and he sings a song comparing her to the moon. The metal jewelry in her hair is reminiscent of horns because she is Isis/Hathor. That's why his mask has horns. He's not a goblin. There's some seedy things in this eyes wide shut style bowl. His chair is shaped like a horn. Look at the horns at the top of the chair. It shows he's a horned god. I was looking for pictures of the necklace he wears. These are recreations. Look at the spiral. It is a triangle shape, which is the Trinity, but upside down. It's a horned god symbol. The spirals connect Faunus to Cernunnos to Jareth, aka Osiris. He's a Time Lord. He can move time. Holger's waistcoat has a face on it. He has a face looking back and one looking forward, so he's Janus. She had to ask him how to get into the labyrinth, and he opened the door. Janus is the god of doorways. I think Sarah, Toby, and Jareth are incarnations of Isis, Osiris, and Horus. Faun in Gematria reduces to 6633. Cernunnos reduces to 6633. Freemason reduces to 6633. Satanism is 6633. Pedophilia is 6633. Let's put it all together. All three of these have 96. Satanism is a pedophilic practice. However, Freemasonry is connected to Satanism. I'm using their method. They are aware that numbers have frequency. We can do the American spelling, which is PEDO. That's 5544. We've got mirror numbers 95 and 59. Pan is 4455. Again, 3113. Pansexual is 5544. Hern is 5544 with a reverse of 22 over 22. And CERN has a reduction of 22 over 22, connecting Hern to CERN. Portals 22. We also have a 3-2 and a 2-3. Here's some exposition. What is pansexual really? They give you the cover story, but for them it means something else. You blindly follow these programs and don't question it. The iconography matches with what I'm saying. The numbers confirm what this truly is. Freemasons practice some dodgy things. You need to start seeing that. It's not to make men better, it's to keep us under their control. Elk Lodge reduces to 8811. Osiris is 8811. Inanna is 8811. Look at the numbers. Osiris is connected to Inanna because Inanna is Isis. Got more numbers, 377337. That tells you what this really is. Bepo reduces to 11277. The Green Man reduces to 21177. Isis is 11277. Connecting Bepo to Isis, the portal goddess, through sex magic. The Green Man matches up with Isis because Osiris is the Green Man. It's time to fix up and stop following these programs and getting involved in them, because then you start practicing the rituals that they're putting out. The origin of Freemasonry, according to Masonic scholars, focuses on two theories. Nimrod was the first Mason and established the order. The Knights Templar and their secrets evolved into modern-day Freemasonry. I've been asked over the years which theory is correct. The answer is both. The seeds of Freemasonry were planted in Babylon, watered by Egypt, and nurtured over the millennia by the mystery religions. I will say this for any member of the Blue Lodge that might stumble upon this work. The oath and ceremony you went through to enter the lodge is word for word and step for step the same ritual used to become a witch within any coven. We need to understand that Freemasonry literally covers the globe. Every bit of information I write about in the Chanel Directive, including the reoccurrence of the number 11, which is very significant in both Masonic and esoteric workings. Masonic lodges worldwide are recruiting grounds for the elite in search of new ground troops. Freemasons who have the temperament and belief system for the Luciferian work are shuffled off to the side and then brought into separate circles of influence within the Masonic system. The average members of the lodge labor within their communities and become the outer layer of protection for the occult core. The members become part of the local churches, civic organizations, businesses, and political parties. Whether or not they realize it, they are indeed connected to those within the darker circles of Freemasonry with a stronger cord than the toe that was originally placed around their necks. Our children are no longer taught, they are trained and conditioned to respond to the stimuli provided by the order. In the eyes of the order, there is little difference in average human American citizen and the dogs Pavlov trained to respond to his cues. Now we are conditioned to vote their candidates into office, work in their corporations and purchase their goods. Don't think, don't connect the dots, just respond to the stimuli that they provide in the media. It would appear that all of the testing advertising does in marketing research groups is merely to find the right trigger to gain the planned conditioned response they want. Perhaps one of the reasons that homeschooling is frowned upon today is not because homeschooled children are academically inferior, but because they lack the psychological conditioning provided within the structured educational system the elite built in the early 20th century. Svali states, the Illuminati is a group that practices a form of faith known as enlightenment. It is Luciferian, and they teach their followers that their roots go back to the ancient mystery religions of Babylon, Egypt, and Celtic Druidism. They have taken what they consider the best of each, the foundational practices, and joined them together in a strongly occult discipline. Many groups at the local level worship ancient deities such as El, Baal, and Astarte, as well as Isis and Osiris and Set. I do know that these people teach and practice evil.
It's usually brushed aside as conspiracy theory, and there are some outlandish allegations out there, but every now and then you get something more solid about how the Freemasons operate in Britain. The information in question relates to a 2002 secret Metropolitan Police report called Operation Tiberius that's been leaked to the press. It found that a secret network of Freemasons inside the police have been used by organised crime gangs to corrupt the criminal justice system.
132 in Bush, I've got him at gunpoint. Okay, we'll still send a code 3.
I was born into a family of satanic worshipers. My childhood was one of constant fear and pain. Physical, emotional, and sexual abuse were part of my everyday life. Sacrifices of all kinds and rituals were done on a daily basis. At 8 years old, my mother sold me into prostitution. It was one of the many ways that the coven makes money. And I was a prostitute for the coven for 31 years. At 39, I went on the run, and that is the only reason why that prostitution stopped.
Britain, we've had dozens of police investigations, more than a dozen council inquiries, the Waterhouse report, all of these inquiries, and yet so few convictions. Why do you think that is?
I think there's lots of reasons. I mean, for me, the way forward is quite properly to have an outside force investigation, and that's been called for as I understand it. I think it's very important that right up front, everyone is required to declare whether they have been or currently are a Mason. Right up front, everyone is required to declare whether they have been or currently are a Mason. Section 81 of the Waterhouse Report touches on it very fleetingly. It may or may not be a problem, but let's have it out in the open and make sure that people know what's going on.
Well, because the Masons were, and maybe still are, very powerful here. I mean, do you think there were people being protected by pillars of the establishment?
I don't know. I mean, I you know, there's an investigation to be done, and clearly that's not me because I'm retired. But the fact that the questions there needs solving, it needs clearing once and for all, and the suggestion that there could be undue influences has to be dealt with. I was never a Mason, never have been, never will be, and I was always very clear on that, and therefore it never touched on me. But I think if you know, it's that concern that if you don't know, you just don't know what's going on in the background.
Keith Gregory, are the Masons an avenue that needs to be investigated?
Masons definitely need to be investigated, especially in North Wales. I think nearly everyone, especially on the list that I have, are all members of some sort of Masonic lodge. I think nearly everyone, especially on the list that I have, are all members of some sort of Masonic lodge.
So I wondered if Russ can explain how that could be connected, how Freemasonry could be connected, and all this Nazi and the sexual satanic ritual views.
All right, thanks, Donna. Can Freemasonry be connected to this at all, Russ?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, thank you, Donna, so much. God bless you for your work. We need a lot of workers like you out there helping the victims. Yeah, we have 56,000 Masonic temples in the United States, in every city, every township, by design. There's a reason. Anybody reading Albert Pike can see that he believes in a chaos and a new order. He believes Lucifer, the light bearer, is he's the good guy coming. We've run into the same thing. We've actually, in our taking victims' places, in our investigations, in our tracking down, we've been to many different Masonic temple areas. I'm not going to say that all Masons do this, but I'm saying there's a connection to there, whether that lower level Luciferian got in there and used it. There's no question the buildings have been used, and many survivors, George, thousands of them can talk about the connection there.
You have explained to us that there was human sacrifice that went on inside of the Satanic Church and inside of Satanic ritual. Can you tell us how this was done?
How did they murder people? All the children's posters that you see that are missing, they're pretty much dead. They have underground caverns in the mountains, and they keep the children and the kids and the women and men there. And then at a certain time in mid-September, October, they take them out.
Why is it that no one knows this?
Because there's Satanists in the police force and also in the government, the army. They're everywhere. They're even on the council of, the representatives of the United States also. And they're silenced because this is not being exposed because they don't want it to be exposed. Because they're really good at lying and hiding things.
What happens to the people that want to come out of Satanism?
They get killed. They get followed. They get taken. They get sacrificed in front of the congregation of the Satanic Church.
Why?
Because they know too much information about the Satanists and who their names and places of where they keep the people underground, and they just know too much information. It's like being in a gang or in a mafia. You don't get out alive without consequences.
I realized that there were many people who used their children in the worship of the Prince of Darkness, Satan, Lucifer, Isis, which is an Egyptian princess of darkness, actually, married to the king of the underworld, and that we had many victims of this type of activity.